Rain glistens on the cracked pavement as Ethan, a 10-year-old boy with hollow eyes and a torn backpack, stands beneath a flickering streetlight. The world around him hums with indifference, distant traffic, the hiss of rain, but inside that silence his heartbeat feels thunderous. He clutches a folded note, its paper soft from years of rereading. You are brave. Never stop believing in good people. His mother's handwriting trembles in his fingers like a voice reaching from somewhere safe. A rumble grows in the distance, motorcycles, low and steady, breaking through the night. Their headlights slice across the darkness, illuminating Ethan's face for a fleeting second. Fear flashes first, then something quieter. Hope. The engine slow. Tires hiss against the wet road. A tall man removes his helmet, revealing sharp features softened by concern. His name is Rick, and the scent of gasoline and rain follows him like armor. "Hey, kid!" Rick calls out over the drizzle, his voice firm yet careful, the kind that expects the truth but won't punish it. "You lost." Ethan shakes his head, eyes fixed on the ground. "No, I just can't go home." The words sound too old for him, too practiced, like he's been rehearsing this moment in silence for years. Rick steps closer, studying the boy's bruised cheek and trembling shoulders. Behind him, the other bikers exchange uneasy glances. Men used to storms, now faced with one they can't simply outride. The rain begins to ease, leaving behind a thick, expectant stillness. Rick exhales, lowering his helmet. "All right," he says quietly, almost to himself. "Let's figure this out together." The boy looks up uncertain, searching his face for a reason to trust. Somewhere in that gaze, the first fragile thread of connection is formed, a promise neither of them yet understands. And as the last drops of rain fall, the engines idle like patient hearts, waiting for what comes next.
Morning light creeps through a cracked window, painting dust motes in the stale air of a small kitchen. Ethan sits at the table, knees drawn close, a half-empty bowl of cereal turning soggy before him. Across the room, his stepfather, Tom, slumps in a chair, surrounded by empty bottles and unpaid bills. His presence fills the house like smoke, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Every movement Ethan makes is cautious, measured, an instinct carved from too many nights spent listening for footsteps in the dark. Tom grunts without looking up. "You think you can just eat here for free?" The words land heavy, not shouted, but soaked in quiet cruelty. Ethan doesn't answer. He stares at the small note tucked beside his plate, the one he carries everywhere, his mother's voice trapped in ink. The only proof that love once lived here. Outside, the distant roar of motorcycles echoes faintly through the thin walls. For a brief moment, Ethan's eyes lift, drawn to the sound, to the freedom it carries. Tom notices the glance and scowls. "You keep dreamin', boy. World doesn't care about you." He snatches a bottle, takes another drink, and the room smells of bitterness. Ethan gathers his courage like fragile glass. "Maybe someone does," he whispers, almost inaudible. Tom slams the bottle down, but Ethan doesn't flinch this time. The sound of engines grows louder beyond the window, rumbling like a promise, waiting on the horizon. The boy's small defiance flickers in his gaze, thin but alive, and for the first time, the air shifts, hinting that the world might yet listen to him. The rain returns that night, thin and cold, sliding down the window pane like tears the house refuses to shed. Ethan sits on his bed, knees to chest, listening to the low grumble of Tom's voice in the living room. Each word is soaked in resentment, each breath heavy, with the sour sting of alcohol. The boy knows what comes next. He can read the rhythm of anger the way others read a clock. The shouting rises, then the thud of something thrown. The floor creaks, and Ethan's heart starts to race. He reaches beneath his pillow and finds the folded note again, its edges soft and frayed. "You're brave. Never stop believing in good people." His mother's voice steadies him, the only sound that doesn't hurt. He slips the note into his pocket, grabs his backpack, and moves toward the window. The glass is cold against his palms as he slides it open. Behind him, Tom mutters a curse, the sound of a chair scraping back.
"Boy.
You in there?" The words claw through the silence. Ethan doesn't answer. He swings his legs over the sill, the wind biting at his face, and drops into the wet grass below. His feet splash, but he doesn't stop. He runs, past the dying streetlights, past the fences that have always kept him in. The rain soaks through his clothes, but each step feels like breathing for the first time. Blocks away, the hum of engines grows closer, the same sound he'd heard that morning. It's steady, alive, almost protective. He follows it without thinking, drawn to the vibration of something that feels like power, like freedom. The bikers are stopped near an old service station, talking under the neon glow. Rick is there, helmet tucked under his arm, the quiet authority of someone who has seen too much but still believes in decency. Ethan hesitates at the edge of the lot, shivering. Rick notices first, steps forward with cautious concern. "Kid? You again?" His tone is gentle but laced with curiosity. Ethan nods, his voice trembling. "I didn't know where else to go." Rick studies him, seeing more than the soaked clothes and bruises, seeing the fear behind his eyes. "You runnin' from home?" Ethan swallows, then answers with a small, shaking voice. "From a man who says I don't deserve one." The simplicity of the statement lands heavier than a scream. Rick glances back at the others, who fall silent. None of them laugh or question. They just wait. After a long moment, Rick removes his jacket and drapes it over the boy's shoulders. "Then tonight," he says quietly, "you're not running alone." Ethan looks up, disbelief warring with gratitude. The engines idle softly behind them, their rhythm almost human. For the first time in a long while, he feels the weight in his chest begin to lift. The storm hasn't passed, not yet, but somewhere within its noise, a different kind of thunder begins to sound, one that promises change. The night deepens, heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and gasoline. The bikers gather in a quiet circle beneath the station's flickering light, their voices low, uncertain. Rick stands slightly apart, his gaze fixed on Ethan, who sits on an overturned crate, wrapped in a blanket far too big for him. The boy's eyes dart nervously from face to face, as if waiting for one of them to tell him to leave. But no one does. The group is rough-edged, worn by years and road dust, yet every man there feels the same silent pull, a child alone, asking for safety in a world that rarely gives it. Rick finally breaks the quiet. "Kid, you can't stay out here forever. What's really going on at home?" Ethan hesitates, his lips trembling. He glances at the ground before whispering, "He hits me when he drinks. He says I ruined everything." The words hang in the air like smoke. No one moves, but every jaw tightens, every breath shortens. One of the bikers, a broad man named Cole, mutters, "We should call someone." Another shakes his head. "They'll just send him back." The truth of it sinks in, heavy and cruel. Rick kneels down to meet Ethan's eyes. "What do you want us to do, son?" he asks. Ethan looks up, the question cutting through him. For a moment, he almost says nothing. But then his voice, quiet but firm, finds its shape. "Just don't let him find me." The rain slows, replaced by the soft ticking of cooling engines. Rick studies the boy, small, drenched, trembling, but there's something unbroken in him, a spark that refuses to die. "All right," Rick says at last, rising to his feet. "Then we'll make sure he doesn't." The others exchange uncertain glances, but one by one, they nod. The decision needs no vote. It feels inevitable. Ethan grips the edge of the blanket, eyes wide with something close to hope. Rick gives his shoulder a reassuring squeeze before turning toward the road. The engines roar back to life, steady and powerful, echoing through the night. As they ride off toward the darkness, a fragile calm settles over Ethan. He doesn't know where they're going or what waits ahead, but for the first time, he isn't afraid to find out. The road glistens under the weak glow of streetlights as the bikers pull into the narrow lane where Ethan's house sits, the air thick with tension. The engines fade to a low growl, their presence steady, almost ceremonial. Rick dismounts first, scanning the quiet windows before turning to Ethan. "You sure about this?" he asks. Ethan nods, though fear flickers behind his eyes. He needs to know I'm not alone anymore. Tom bursts through the doorway before they can knock, his expression sour with disbelief. What the hell is this? He snarls, staggering forward. The light from inside spills onto the porch, revealing the bruises along his knuckles. Rick stands still, his calm presence a deliberate contrast to Tom's rage. We're here because the boys had enough, he says evenly. Tom laughs, a sound without warmth. You think a pack of strangers can tell me how to raise my kid? His words slur, but his hands are already curling into fists. Rick doesn't flinch. He's not your punching bag. Not tonight. Not ever again. The other bikers remain behind him, silent but solid, an unspoken wall of resolve. Tom's bravado falters for a second, his eyes darting between the men and the small figure of Ethan standing behind Rick. The boy's shoulders are trembling, but his chin is lifted. When Tom takes a step forward, Rick raises a hand, his voice low but sharp. Don't. The single word carries enough weight to freeze the air. From down the street, faint sirens begin to wail. Maria must have called the police after all. Tom's face twists, panic replacing anger. You've ruined everything, he spits, but his voice cracks under the sound of the approaching law. Rick shakes his head. No, he says softly. You did that yourself. Ethan moves closer, standing beside Rick, and for the first time, Tom looks smaller than the boy he tried to break. The bikers don't move until the flashing lights paint the house red and blue, until officers take Tom away in handcuffs. As the engines start again, Ethan turns to Rick, tears cutting clean lines through the dirt on his cheeks. Thank you, he whispers. Rick places a firm hand on his shoulder. You're safe now, he says. And as the night wind carries their voices away, the world feels different. Fragile, but full of promise. Morning arrives quietly, the first sunlight stretching across the small town like forgiveness. The storm has passed, leaving behind a hush that feels new. Ethan wakes in a booth at Maria's diner, wrapped in a clean blanket that smells faintly of coffee and cinnamon. The seat opposite him is filled with plates of pancakes and eggs, steam curling upward in soft spirals. For the first time in years, he eats without fear of footsteps, without waiting for the sound of a slammed door. Rick leans against the counter, his leather jacket hanging from one arm, watching the boy with quiet satisfaction. Maria pours coffee beside him, her gaze gentle but steady. You did a good thing, Rick, she says softly. He shakes his head. We just stopped to listen. He did the brave part. Her words linger, settling into the kind of silence that means agreement rather than absence. Ethan finishes eating and glances at the door as the bikers enter, their laughter breaking the stillness. Cole tosses a small object onto the table, a miniature silver helmet on a keychain. Figured you ought to have one, he says, grinning. Ethan picks it up carefully, turning it over in his palm as though it might vanish if he looks away. Does this mean I'm one of you now? He asks. Rick smirks. Kid, you've been one of us since the night you stood your ground. Outside, the world gleams with the aftermath of rain. Rick takes Ethan to the empty lot behind the diner, where a small dirt bike waits, its chrome glinting like a promise. Ethan hesitates, his hands trembling as he grips the handlebars. Rick steadies him with a nod. Don't look down, he says. Just trust yourself. The engine sputters to life, and Ethan begins to ride, slowly at first, then faster, until laughter replaces the echo of fear in his voice. As the sun climbs higher, the bikers watch from a distance, their faces lit by quiet pride. Rick folds his arms, the faintest smile tugging at his mouth. Guess the roads is now, he murmurs. Ethan circles once more, his laughter echoing across the open air, and for the first time, the sound doesn't fade, it carries.
Evening settles over the town in soft amber tones, the kind of light that turns everything gentle. Inside Maria's diner, the day's noise has faded to a comfortable hush. Ethan sits at a corner table, the silver helmet keychain resting beside a framed photograph. Him, Rick, and the bikers, all grinning beneath a summer sky. Next to it lies a note he's carried for so long, now smoothed and placed with care inside the frame. His mother's words are still visible through the glass. You are brave. Never stop believing in good people. Rick steps in quietly, removing his gloves as the doorbell chimes. He watches Ethan for a moment before approaching. "You look different," he says, sliding into the opposite seat, like a kid who's finally found his road. Ethan smiles faintly. "I think I did." He hesitates, tracing the edge of the photo frame with one finger. "Do you think she'd be proud of me?" Rick leans back, thoughtful. "She'd be proud that you kept believing, even when the world didn't give you a reason to." His voice is low, sincere, carrying the weight of a man who knows what it means to lose and to heal. Ethan nods, blinking fast, and for the first time, the question doesn't ache as much. Outside, the faint rumble of motorcycles fills the air again. The rest of the group pulls up, engines idling in unison, their laughter drifting through the glass. Rick stands, tossing his gloves on the table. "Come on, little brother," he says with a grin. "We got miles to ride." Ethan grabs his jacket, tucks the framed photo under his arm, and follows him out. The sunset spills across the asphalt as the engines roar to life. Ethan climbs on the back of Rick's bike, the wind catching his hair as they pull away. Behind them, Maria waves from the doorway, her smile bright and knowing. The horizon opens before them, gold, endless, forgiving, as they disappear down the road. Ethan presses his hand against his pocket where the note used to be. He no longer needs to read it to remember. The words live inside him now, steady as the rhythm of the engines, whispering the same truth with every mile. Kindness can save a life, and belief can make a whole.